Once upon a time, there was a kingdom that rose up from many, a world that had become quite modern, technology, very similar to our own. And these people that rose up became the leading force, and their nation became the symbol of the empire that controlled 3/4 of the world. It is said these people were happy and were always merry with song. They had a life of leisure. Their computers took care of all the thinking, and machines did all the labor. And there was no need to work. The only profession that remained was performance. And they had their performance indeed. One of those performers was Arthur Wood. He wasn't talented in song and dance, but he had a way with getting to people to see his message. He was an inspirational speaker. He gave the nation a sense of purpose, character. But this sort of society, fame was fleeting, and everyone was a star. Everyone was wanting to be a star. There was nothing else to be. There was nothing else to do. Life was so easy and simple, and the machines were so handy and making life very comfortable. But the good times lasted much longer than they should. Certainly, everyone knew that. The good times, the ones that bring weak men, as they say. And it began to be an assumption that they would never end. But daily life here became more and more difficult as the kingdom began to fray. And our character, Arthur Woods, had sensed these things happening and was trying to prepare this pampered generation for some perhaps difficult times. He wanted to at least have some of the people that would not be devastated should the utopia fail. It was his lifelong purpose to build this invisible army of good and steady sorts, as he said. But it came at a price, because he was not saying what they wanted to hear. And in this land, that was something that was not going to work. They were a pampered people, a wise people, and very proud, and did not want to be told what to think or do. They were an independent-minded people, and a very noble people in many ways. But they seduced the entire kingdom to their song. And by this time, everything that was here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special guest. Arthur Woods is here. He's the archaeologist, historian, and poet laureate of Kazabar. Go ahead, Arthur. Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. You know that. Day in Kazavar. How many times do we have bad days? We don't have them. They're obsolete. But I did want to talk about my latest book that I spent some time in the production land, the hinterlands, the place you never have to go. And I don't know if they want you to talk about it or not. I mean, the media controls things, but they're not malicious. No one's ever gotten in trouble for saying something that he thought was true. But still, when you go against the grain, just like always, you do get a little pushback. But folks, I would like us to take a little time to realize that our little paradise here does come at a price. I've seen the price it takes Yeah, machines do most of the work, but there are a lot of people in that area, and they don't live as nicely as we do. Are they different than us? Do they not matter? Or do you simply not know about them? Well, most likely you don't know about them, and if you did, you wouldn't like it. But you can't get a book published about that. So I do what I can, but folks, live the dream. I'm not trying to stop any of you from having the blast that we're having. I mean, we don't have the problems that I historically read about. We're doing well. But we're still people. Despite all the stuff they plug into our brains, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're people, and so are the ones we don't know about and the suffering we're not aware of. Let's not be callous to that. What can we do about it? I don't know that we can do anything about it as individuals. The Pakistan knows all about it. Shouldn't that be talked about in forums like mine? Well, it should, but it's not. If you don't say what people want to hear, nobody's going to listen. Even the government kowtows to public opinion. How are you going to argue with millions of aristocrats who are empowered? That's you. Nobody can argue with you. Not even the Pakistan. And I certainly am not going to be the first to offer to argue with you. But I am suggesting that the things you want for yourself, you should want for everybody. And just go to bed tonight knowing that everybody doesn't have it as good as you do here in Kosovo. But they're bringing some wine and cheese. I guess we should eat. In just a few short seasons, the people of Babazar had begun to suffer, even by their standards. Many were struggling as supplies were dwindling. The insurgents that had control of most of the production had to be satiated, and the Pakistan made concessions after another. Life, as they knew it, was getting harder and harder to present to the populace who were spoiled. But for the most part, at least at the very top, there was very little concern. Arthur Woods was under pressure to make the people happy, but the situation was not getting any better day by day. Arthur Woods with you again for an update, and just to remind you that although we have entered a dark cloud, keep your chin up, but things are just around the corner. The Pakistan has always coming up with different ways to fight the injustice that the insurgents have presented upon us. Of course they want what we want. We have a great lifestyle. And as they develop, perhaps they will increase their goods as well. But they don't want to wait. They see us, and they raise prices, and they demand more, and more, and more. So what are we to do? Well, the insurgents have been pushed back. But there's one thing that the Emperor will ask you once again to take one small sacrifice. And everyone is asked to spend at least 2 days helping at the various community platforms, places where food is prepared, services to us all. We should spend 2 days a week on community service, and that will keep your citizen scores very high, and it's not asking much at all. And the Kwaka-san just asked me to thank you in advance because you so far have done everything that he has asked. The insurgents had understood the technology enough because they were sometimes the only maintenance, and they began to think as an aggressor. They learned to sabotage what was working, to make it work against Babazar. Babazar had rewritten the rules. There were no more cycles of prosperity mirrored with cycles of doom. They were prosperous for generations on. But the price that this required was beginning to cause turmoil on the dark side, the portion of the world that basically supported the Babazar regime. Fairness and equality was the standard in Babazar. But outside that, it was as primitive as it probably could have been. And these primitives were gathering in numbers. The Babazars were not reproducing, and they were not contributing. They were simply living their lives, drinking their wine, singing their songs. Babazar was not burning, but the smoke was beginning to be detected. Arthur was forced to give inaccurate reports about things that were changing day to day to keep this Babazar lifestyle afloat. Shortages were becoming common. The ease of deliveries, electronic devices were beginning to malfunction. The typical sort of things that technologies typically avoid through the cycle of competition and the like. There was no economy of sort. It was simply an aristocracy that was the majority of the people. Seems like a good deal. That's why they called it Utopia. Utopia gone bad is possibly worse than no utopia at all. Good morning, comrades of Babazar. The Security Council for Babazar has established some new requirements to make sure your home is protected. All you have to do is go to the local council and update your resume and update your details to be sure you're covered. Because you can't live in utopia without taking care of some basic things. Also, food deliveries will not be made on odd days. They will be made on even days only until further notice. So you're urged to keep that in mind as you're making your requests, and also be aware that certain provinces may have to expedite delivery or invited to pick them up at the local depot in your province. So everything is still ease and comfort, and we're singing and dancing merrily as usual. Just keep in mind those food deliveries, even days only, so just bump the order and everything will be fine. It didn't start out deviously, but to create the lifestyle that they enjoyed in Babazar, they had to have information from people. They had electronic surveillance that would make us today blush. Implanted devices of many types. They knew everything about the people, and that's how they filled their needs. They had to know, but now filling those needs was becoming a burden. And Emperor Krakistan had consulted with all his advisors, and it was determined that there were too many people, perhaps, in Babazar. It was an inconvenient truth. Well, welcome, citizens of Babazar. I'm Arthur Woods with you again to keep you updated on the recent developments. Be sure to click the U button on your device to let everyone know that you've received this update. That will improve your citizen score and help you achieve a higher level of goods in your home. Things we all like to have, and it's good to be a good citizen. And Babazar has always rewarded good citizenship. And the Emperor has asked me to tell you a heartfelt thank you. The Emperor is thanking all of you for your recent sacrifices. And he wants you to know that the victory over the insurgents that have caused these delays is imminent, around the corner. There is a secret weapon that the Emperor has basically decided to unleash upon the kingdom of Babazar. Each of you will be given an opportunity. You'll be notified of the window, the time and the date will be dependent on the color chart of your province. But all of you will receive this invitation of unprecedented proposition, and no empire or no emperor has ever offered his people what we are offering you today. The notifications will be coming as the openings open, but the intent is to get the entire population this opportunity. You've all seen how wondrous our health care system is. Lifespans are much longer than any in history, and the ease and quality of life has never been better for the average person. There's almost no sickness here. Everyone is healthy and they live a long and fruitful life, but the medical system we have is partially to be credited for this. And as you know, you've been asked at times to come in for some mandatory updates and some voluntary updates. And this one, according to the Emperor, he is going to list it as a voluntary upgrade. You don't have to do it, but you will get one opportunity. Look for your notification, and when you do, you will follow the instructions, which are very simple. You will simply go to the local clinic near you. They're all over the place. And you can receive, the family can receive the upgrade all in one visit. The family can receive the upgrade all in one visit. And now you are indeed you're indeed a superhuman. These upgrades are fascinating. Your lifespans will increase exponentially. And, as I said, just look for your notification, take the family down. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to bring anything. They already know who you are. Show up, get the upgrade, and then you can join the Emperor's army, as he is not fighting alone and never has. But he has not troubled the people with this war, this battle, up until now. So you can take this upgrade at your own discretion. It will be offered once and once only, and understand that it might dramatically change the dynamics of society should you find yourself without the upgrade. And you'll see just how marvelous this is. So, good news, finally, for Babazar. It was, of course, merely a devious plan by the Emperor. He saw he was losing the battle to the insurgents and had ceded much of the territory, and agreed to pay much more for raw materials and finished goods. And the lifestyle of Babazar would be reduced at any way the game was played. But rather than face that and be deemed a poor emperor. Now before you judge, put yourself in the position of Pakistan. He had held a party that had lasted generations and was a marvel, and he was held in high esteem by all. And like a good host, he saw that he was running out of wine. And his answer was to reduce the guest list dramatically. He made the choice to reduce the population. He made a choice to reduce the population. It was calculated. Those that came in for the upgrades, if they didn't meet a proper credit score or citizen score, was simply done away with efficiently and quietly. Most of those that showed up for the upgrades would receive nothing, but perhaps they did get an upgrade after all. It was a devious scheme that has been tried before in history, but never have they did it in such an innocuous manner. There were no cattle cars, no raids at 3 in the morning. They voluntarily came and couldn't wait to get their due. The story of Babazar would have been a warning for anyone who knew the story. It happened in the future, so we were not able to benefit from the story. But it's an age-old tale that seems to never change. Is that when you at first begin to deceive, it becomes a complicated web that you weave. So our hero, Arthur Woods, was lying to the people, but at the same time, he was speaking in codes, a type of code he knew that the right people would understand. And so, it is a lesson that the perfect utopian society faltered just as they all do, for the very simple fact that they no longer valued the truth over what felt pretty and dainty. The same problem that every empire faces. Even the best one failed. In this case, Arthur Woods was successful in arranging enough people to say no and put their foot down And the empire of Babazar failed to last in history, and its leftover parts ended up being the assembling blocks to the next empire. And that is how it goes as it goes, on and on. Let us not be so captured by the trappings of empire. Kazabar was just one more casualty of the human failure to somehow figure out how to succeed.